I'm like, step one, remove all learn more CTAs from your emails, your websites, your blog posts, your LinkedIn posts. Quit saying learn more.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Ashley Faus. Ashley is a marketer, writer, and speaker by day, and a singer, actor, and fitness fiend by night. Her work has been featured in Time, Forbes, the Journal of Brand Strategy and Marketing Profs, and she's shared insights with audiences at Harvard Business Review, Inbound, and Marketing Profs. She works for Atlassian, a collaboration software maker on a mission to unleash the potential of every team. Congrats on your featured work and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I'm really excited that you have a new book coming out in May all about human-centered marketing. So what exactly is human-centered marketing and why do companies need it?
So human-centered marketing is really getting back to what marketing is supposed to be about, which is matching problems and solutions for people. And I think companies have kind of gotten away from it. The reason they need it is because they've gotten so far away from it. They've focused so much on attributing every single dollar spent to every single $2, $3, $20 of revenue that they've completely forgotten that it's not a row on a spreadsheet. It's not a dollar in a dashboard. It's a human that had a problem and they needed a solution and they bought that from you as a company. And so I actually think it's a double-edged sword, like all of the technology and the tools and the attribution and that false sense that we can basically boil down every single thing anyone says or does into something on a dashboard. That's actually gotten us so far away from focusing on the human. So that's what it is. It's about, getting back to matching problems and solutions for people. And I think the reason that we need it is because we've gone so far in the other direction on attribution and tracking and dashboards and spreadsheets that we forget that there's actually a human on the other end of the screen.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I totally agree 100%. And I think it's something that when you try to distill down human behavior and people as messy as humans are into a spreadsheet or a dashboard or into numbers, it's just not, it doesn't translate as cleanly as people think. And so the result is that if they're so focused on the numbers, they forget about the people. And then when just that act of forgetting about the people or not focusing on the people comes across in the tone and the communication and the content. And so people pick up on that, even if they're not like aware of it, they'll just notice that tonal shift and they'll feel less connected to the business and they can feel the kind of transactional nature of it. And it's something that if you just boil down all your relationships with transactions, you're suddenly super vulnerable to a lot more things because someone comes up with a shiny new offer or a special deal and people are going to leave working with your business or buying from your business because of really surface level petty things that if you had a bigger relationship wouldn't even sway them at all. They would be like, I have this connection with this business. I'm going to stay with them no matter what because there's this relationship. And I think companies have let those atrophy over the last decade or so, and it's suddenly all the cracks in their foundations are revealing themselves. So what are some of the ways that you talk about in the book for companies to rebuild these relationships?
I think the biggest thing is really focusing on trust. So your point about that transactional mindset is key. Get away from that. So we know people trust people like themselves and people buy from people that they trust. And so if you're constantly showing up with this idea that you're going to extract the most value from the buyer, and that's the only mindset you come at them with, they're immediately defensive about it. And so this comes up, for example, it's like everybody tunes out because they think all content is sales content. So if I mention my employer, if I mention a product, I must be trying to sell you, and it immediately puts you on guard, right? And you're just like, I don't want to talk to this person because I feel like they're trying to sell me something. But at the same time, we crave true experience, true expertise. I want to know your story, and I want to know why you want to use this or how you're solving these problems. And so there's this fundamental disconnect where it's like, if I mention anything personal, if I talk about my personal career or my personal stack, and it includes my current employer or current tools that my employer makes, I'm trying to sell you. But you can't really trust me unless I give you my personal background, right? So there's this balance. And I think that it's counterintuitive, but if you actually explicitly sell when you're selling and give people the option to choose a non-buying path explicitly, you actually build more trust so that when they are ready to have that sales conversation, or they do want to take buy intent actions, you know that that's explicitly what they want to do, right? If you invited me onto this podcast and you said, hey, Ashley, let's talk about your book. I'm excited. And then all of a sudden you come at me and you're like, did you know that I sell a course and I sell, services? Do you want to buy my services? And I'd be like, I thought you invited me onto the podcast to talk about my ideas, right? Like, that bait and switch is the thing that breaks the trust. And we do this in small ways. So even one of my current actionable things that somebody's like, what could I do today? And I'm like, step 1, remove all learn more CTAs from your emails, your websites, your blog posts, your LinkedIn posts. Quit saying learn more. I don't know what's going to happen when I click that button or I click that link. Am I going to talk to sales? Am I going to get pricing? Am I going to register for a webinar? Am I going to RSVP to a happy hour? Am I going to read a blog post that's ungated? I don't know what happens when I click that. So be very explicit. You'll notice as I'm promoting the book on LinkedIn, I specifically say, pre-order the book, and I give a link, right? I don't say like, by the way, I have a book. Okay, so is this link going to take me to a summary of the book? Is it going to give me a free chapter? Is it going to take me to Amazon? When does the book come out, right? I specifically say pre-order. Cool. That if you click that button and it takes you to Amazon and you click buy, you don't get the book until May. It's not coming in 2 days like it normally does, right? So very explicit language helps build that trust. And we do this when we talk to other people, right? We look each other in the eye, we assess the body language, we assess the tone of voice. We have an innate ability to do this when we're actually face to face. But as soon as you start putting the screens or brands between people, it's like we suddenly shut off, and it becomes this like bait and switch thing, and it just completely erodes the trust.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to, I think some companies might not be doing this with malicious intent. They're just not clear communicators, and they have an idea of what's going on, but they don't know how to put themselves in their audience's shoes and think about it from, if I had no idea what learn more means with all this, then would you trust that link, or would you want to click on it? And I think there's that lack of empathy and understanding between the marketing team and their audience and who they're trying to communicate with, and just understanding the experience that people have with a brand. And I like that you mentioned earlier about having like buy intent actions and communication, and then just relationship building actions and content, and keeping them very separate so that there is no ambiguity about, oh, this is going to go to a blog post about like a topic that you care about is adding some value, but it's not going to try and sell you anything. And I think you mentioned the companies put out all this content, but they have the mindset of, we got to always be driving sales. And when you try and rush the relationships, you don't build a relationship, because people can tell that you're just trying to sell to me, and they don't lean in, they don't trust you, they don't open up because they're feeling pressured. And so I think one of the themes that I've noticed over the episodes I've recorded for this is that there's this need for companies to, if they want to speed up their growth, they got to slow down the relationship building and take the time to build it properly, the way humans actually build relationships, which takes time. You can't force it. It's not like when you're in kindergarten, you show up and like meet someone for like, hey, we're best friends now. Like it just doesn't work when you're an adult in like the business world, or even in like in the B2C world. You don't get that instant trust. It takes time to build a relationship. And if all your content is either ambiguous or like hinting at you're probably just trying to sell to people, they're not going to stick around, because people don't like being quote unquote sold to, especially anymore when it's always in our faces.
Well, and I think the other piece of this is it's such a narrow exchange of value. And the assumption is that I, as a marketer, am going to extract value from you as a buyer. And it's like, even the words that we use, I identify as a marketer and I've identified you as a buyer, and I will sell you and you will purchase from me. It's like, what a narrow exchange. Like, we don't generally think about any other relationship in those types of terms, where it's just so each person is stuck in their own box and the exchange of value is so one-sided and so narrow. And so even from a company perspective, building trust with investors or shareholders, not just customers, if we want to keep it to more of a monetary exchange, right? Partners that you could build a strategic alliance with to have better integrations with your products, or maybe you're weak in a service and they're strong in a service, and the two of you can partner to grow together, and so the way you show up actually attracts more strategic partners. If you think about it from a talent perspective, I know currently we're in kind of an employer's market where there is a glut of talent on the market, and so employers don't feel as concerned about competing for the best talent. That pendulum swings frequently. It was not that long ago that we were in an employee market, and finding, attracting, and retaining the best talent was a huge concern from a business perspective. People want to work on interesting problems. They want to work for companies where they're aligned from a values and a recognition perspective. And so showing up as that employer, it's not just, well, that's employer branding, that's candidate branding or recruiting brand. And it's like, no, the problems that you solve need to be relevant and interesting, and the solutions that you provide need to be challenging. People like to be challenged in their work, right? So even this idea that like, well, we're going to show buy intent or use intent content. Yes, the ultimate next action for the audience might be to book a demo or contact sales, or participate in an RFP if you're a services business for a buy intent content. Use intent content, it would be to log in or attend office hours or reach out to your account manager, right? But the candidates who are going to build those offerings also consume that content to get a sense for who are your customers, what kinds of challenges are they trying to solve, what kind of solutions are you building for them, do I like those solutions, right? So I think it's a really unfortunate set of boxes to put ourselves in. I am a marketer selling and you are a buyer buying, and the only exchange that we can have is basically a one-way monetary exchange, when the reality is there are multiple roles. We are always our full selves. Careers are long, company longevity is long, and the exchange of value, there's so many different ways to exchange value. So I actually think it's more of an abundance mindset when you take this human-centered approach versus this scarcity mindset. And like, again, it's just so adversarial if you're in these narrow boxes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I love the way you framed it, that it's not just marketer to buyer. And actually that relationship, the fact that like it can't change, the idea that you're stuck in these boxes, from a storytelling standpoint, the only characters that don't grow over the course of a story are victims, and no one likes to be the victims. If you're saying you're a buyer, I'm going to get you to buy from me no matter what, is basically making them the victim of your content, of your focus. And you're just trying to extract something from them, and they're not really getting much from it. They're not growing. They're not. And so it's interesting how when you approach it from the human-centered side of things, and you see them as a whole person first, and then potentially as a buyer, potentially as an employer, potentially as a collaborator, and you approach it as a human, not just as a marketer or a salesperson. It empowers everyone to have a much more beneficial relationship in a lot more robust ways than just a monetary transaction. And it's more about building a community of people around the brand. And that's what leads to, like you mentioned, the brand longevity, because if there are disruptions or things do happen, there's a lot more of a relationship to support the brand and the business and people beyond just, okay, you hit buy, now we're going to get you to buy again. And that all that stuff doesn't translate well to a dashboard.
Right. Right. Yeah, one thing that's interesting about that, so I do musical theater as my hobby. I actually started college as a musical theater major. And one of the ways that helps me as a marketer is I tend to be an ensemble level performer. And so I'm frequently having to change costumes and change songs and change the way my body works and change my motivations from scene to scene. And it's so interesting with live theater because technically everything is laid out, right? I'm supposed to go here, you're supposed to go here. We do a handoff or whatever, but it's live. And sure enough, sometimes big things will change, other times small things will change. So I remember I was doing a production of Cinderella and I had this like tray of fake pastries. And so I was supposed to go around and sell the pastries or whatever. And for the whole rehearsal period, I had been miming this tray and someone was grabbing my arm and turning me around. And the first night where I actually held the tray and had my full costume, the whole thing, they grabbed my arm and the tray went flying into the orchestra pit. The pastries went flying everywhere, right? And it was just like, did I kill the violinist? Like, is everyone okay, right? That had never happened. In rehearsal, I had the tray, it had never happened before. And that's what can happen in live theater, right? And so I feel like it's kind of the same thing with marketing. We try to plot out this linear journey, awareness, consideration, decision, and then if there's obviously a retention phase, if you're in a SaaS business. And the reality is that sometimes, even though you've had the tray and your costume, somebody grabs your arm and the pastries go flying into the orchestra pit. What happens in that scenario, right? And this idea that we're going to plot out and choreograph everything and map it all into our dashboards and everything will go as it should, that has never happened. That doesn't happen. Humans don't behave that way. And so I get it that we're trying to abstract away this complexity because we need to be able to define roles and responsibilities. We need to be able to, narrow our constraints. But this idea that the humans are just going to neatly have their tray of pastries and they're never going to go flying into the orchestra pit, no, we have to constantly be willing and able to, change that mindset, change those costumes, change that behavior to match whatever is happening for the audience.
Yeah, and I think that I totally agree that the idea of a linear funnel that everybody's going to move through in an orderly fashion, and it's going to go from this to this to this to this, and then in reality, it's just like a knotted mess of cords that people will move through, and they'll loop around, and they'll go laterally, and if you can't adapt quickly enough, and you can't meet people where they are, wherever they happen to be, in whatever order they're going through, your marketing is going to struggle because again, you're trying to force people to be predictable. And I know marketing teams and especially leadership teams want to see predictable results from marketing. It's that's not how humans work. That's not how there's so many variables you can't possibly forecast all out with any sort of certainty. And the only way to really succeed these days is to be adaptable and agile and responsive and embrace the mess and the humanity of things, and not try and force it into these like the marketer buyer relationships, because that's just not how people behave and work. And it's causing all the unsustainable situation we're in right now with a lot of businesses marketing.
Yeah. Well, and this is part of why, so one of the frameworks that I talk about in the book is reimagining the audience journey, not just the buyer journey or the customer journey, but the audience journey as a playground. And so even just that mindset of like, from a wording perspective, again, we go back to it of, oh yes, I'm going to make a customer journey map. And the first, touch point in the customer journey map is a prospect lands on our website. And I'm just like, wow, okay. So sure, there's some survivorship bias, right? If we are going to plot customer journeys, we can do that. And if we are going to start those journeys from the website, we can do that. But that's not to say that all journeys are customer journeys and that the first touch point in a journey is the website. We can bound it and say, I want to plot a customer journey that started on the website, or, where we acknowledge that it starts on the website. But the reality is it's an audience journey that behaves a lot more like a playground than a buyer's journey or a customer journey that behaves like a linear funnel.
Love that comparison. And I think it shows just like how messy and unpredictable it can be, but also has that framing of fun, and that it's, when you're building relationships, it needs to be fun and evocative, and creating a space that people want to be in, and not just like a drab beige cubicle farm of metrics. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Ashley. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Ashley, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.